And a very good 5:45 to you all, ladies and gents. Hope you're all well. And our end port of call with this little series, our return to Rotherhithe, is walking London's longest street. But how will we get over the river? Tower Bridge was my last port of call when I'd done the first vlog. And we're going to be, in this series, using two tunnels. This one being the younger of the two. The Rotherhithe Tunnel, pedestrianised and road traffic, built between 1904 and 1908. A little bit more of the history in a minute, and some historical images. But this here is important, this arch. There's a twin one of these on the opposite side, and they were the machines, or boring machines, used to cut the tunnel's way through. So they made a feature of those. The London County Council Rotherhithe Tunnel commenced in 1904 and opened in 1908 by His Royal Highness the Prince of Wales. So we shall get ourselves over the river through the Rotherhithe, and once we've finished walking London's longest street, we'll be going back through the older of the two tunnels, the Brunel one. The world's first tunnel under a navigable river, classed as an eighth wonder of its age. This tunnel, of course, an engineering feat of its day. Much bigger and wider than the first tunnel, the older one. This one's modelled on basically Blackwall Tunnel, but it's got a bigger diameter than Blackwall. And I've started this one particularly early because the fumes get a bit too much in here come the afternoon and early evening. Trust me. I know this by bitter experience. This is an interesting tunnel, this is. Mainly obviously because of its history. Also the tunnel shafts as well. Bear those in mind as we get to a particular one. But now we come to the mouth of the tunnel, and you can see up there, it's well lit. They would have been gaslit in their original day, and the tunnel was quickly converted to electric light. In its day, it was built for pedestrianised and horse-drawn traffic to get people and goods from the East London docks over to the Surrey docks. This tunnel, constructed by the London County Council, was opened by His Royal Highness the Prince of Wales on the 12th of June 1908. So, before we go in, we'll have a look at some historical information and mostly historical images. So join me for that, and then you'll join me back here as we go back into the tunnel. There we are. That's our little bit of history covered. You can go up that way onto Butcher Row and down that way to Limehouse and Stepney and so on. But our journey takes us into the tunnel. No, it's not got the ferocious heat yet either, so that's one good thing. It was stinking warm in here last time I came down this one, and I only went a quarter of the way. Ventilation seems to have improved. And here you're seeing the original 1908 glazed tiles. When we come to a certain part of the tunnel, we lose those. And that's part of the multi-million odd pounds restoration they did to the tunnel in the 80s, I think it was. That man driving a horse and carriage through to celebrate. Something that bugs me because it stands out like a sore thumb, and something I absolutely love, because that's got to have been done by the tunnel maintenance team. If you have any breathing difficulties, walking through this one isn't advisable. If, however, your lungs already look like what's been left over in the event of a fire in a cornfield, crack on. And this was glazed all the way up to the top, and is. That's just pollution, all that black stuff you can see up there. Now, in our historical segment, you know when you saw them putting those great massive structures together that looked like these, that's what they were, casements, and they sank them down and bored their way from the tunnel either end. And we're coming up to the first extreme curve in the tunnel, and these, it's said, were put in place because, as I said, the tunnel was originally horse-drawn traffic, and they feared, this tunnel being much longer than the Blackwall and bigger and wider, they feared that when the horses came through, if they got near towards the end of a long straight tunnel and saw the light, they would start bolting towards the light. So that's why these extreme curves are here as well. See, even now it's relatively busy, but it's quite cool and the fumes aren't too bad. Everything's monitored in here, you see. The CO2 level, the carbon monoxide levels, everything. And as soon as they get to a certain level, then the fans kick in. This has 4 ventilation shafts. 2 of them, very interesting, were also access points down into the tunnel, and they basically were to aid fumes or whatever coming out. The other two suck cool air or fresh air into the tunnel. When we get to our segment on the shafts, you'll see an ugly, great modern looking structure on top of one of them. That's one of the things that sucks air into the tunnel. I think 116 odd years old and still going strong. Those Edwardian engineers should be proud of themselves. And what a hell of a task that would have been. Down here in air pressurised casements and things like that to build the tunnel. When the first tunnel was built under the River Thames, the world's first tunnel under a navigable river, they didn't have the luxury of air pressurisation and everything like that of 1908 or 1904 to 1908, because the first one began in the 1820s. So yeah, it was an arduous job, and the men building that one could only work for 2 hours a shift, and then they had to be dragged out. Quite a few died when the tunnel burst. And here we come to the first of our interesting structures. Remember I said to you about the shafts, that they sank down. Great round cylinders, they sank down. And these were also original access points into the tunnel. Bear this little spot in mind here, because above us are great fans that suck all the pollution out of the tunnel. But I'm going to take you above ground temporarily to show you one of these, this one above ground, and then we'll highlight the other shafts and historical images. That's why I said bear it in mind. So off we go above ground. Here we are, above ground in the fresh air. We're in Rotherhithe at Starkwater, and this is one of the old shafts, the old pedestrianised shafts, sadly no longer pedestrianised. You can see where people would have gone in there and there. And what I like about these, although they're missing their glass roofs, they still have the original LCC London County Council gridding on them, and a much nicer roof than on shaft 1. And where I'll take you to now is I'll show you some other things tunnel and shaft related is just down there, so that's where you'll join me. Part of the Thames walkway that we've just been up on. You can see Starkwater. A wee glimpse of the red structure, which will be covered more fully in our tour of London's longest street. Here we go. Another glimpse of the tunnel shaft and the engine house. We used for machinery and mechanicals and goodness knows what else nowadays to aid in ventilating the tunnel. Where I'm going to take you to is just round here. Here it is. Here's another shaft that's associated with the tunnel. Now, whether it was for ventilation, pumping out water, or pumping in fresh air while the tunnel was being built, I've not been able to ascertain, but linked to our tunnel it is. And unlike the tunnel shaft we've just been looking at, and that we'll look at again in a minute, this one, even though it has portholes, I would not like to go down inside. I would send someone else down in there with a camera, or lower a camera down into it, but no. It's the crack of dawn, and there's scarce a soul around. My favourite time. Remnants of the old docks and wharves and warehouses. Same as this here. Yeah, I'd give my higher teeth to be able to go down inside one of these. Where I'll take you to now is old technology that was surpassed by this newer technology. Crossing points with the river. Many years ago there weren't that many, and as I've said before in a lot of my tours and videos, Thames related ones, the best way to get up, down or across the Thames was by a Thames waterman, by boat in those days. And here's just one of the many old river steps. There's been river steps here on this point for hundreds of years, patched up and repaired. And if you look here, just below the surface of the water, you can see the causeway that it leads out onto. And at a full low tide, it goes all the way out there. And in the old days, if you wanted to get a boat at a low tide, you would have walked to the end of the causeway, and hailed down a Thames waterman. And these old river stairs, a lot of them were surpassed by the technology of the tunnel, which made things a lot more convenient for getting across the Thames. And its twin that I told you of, this one, is just over here on the opposite side of the river. Shadwell, in the King Edward VII Memorial Park. There's a lot of work going on just here at the moment because it's the to do with the Thames Tideway, you know, the new super sewer. And as you can see, it's basically the twin of this one. Also, no longer pedestrianised. And this is the closest we're going to get to one. This is on my side of the river, and it has an interesting plaque. This tablet in memory of Sir Hugh Willoughby, Stephen Burrough, William Burrough, Sir Martin Frobisher and other navigators in the later half of the 17th century set sail from this reach of the River Thames near Ratcliffe Cross to explore the Northern Seas. Erected by the London County Council, 1922. So that was put up when the King Edward Memorial Park, which is directly behind me, was put up. There's a lot of kids about at the moment, so I can't really show too much of the park, and I have covered it before. But yeah. These are ones I'd dearly love to go inside. Very well secured. Sadly, with its old glass roof blown off. And that is where we just were. And its fourth and final tunnel shaft, completely destroyed in the Second World War by bombing, is on the highway just through the park and out that way. So that's where you'll join me next. And here it is, the fourth and final tunnel shaft. We're right along the highway, or Ratcliffe Highway as it was once known, most famous for the Ratcliffe Highway murders. But this little post-war, very plain piece of goods jobby is on the corner of the highway and Heckford Street. And up the top, that thing there, that's what lets all the fumes and stuff out. So that's the tunnel shafts above ground, all covered. Had a look at them. And now for some historical images of them. Then you'll join me back in the tunnel as we carry on our tour. You see it here in 1921 in its original undamaged condition. They had glass roofs like the Greenwich Foot Tunnel, and as I said, they were accessible to pedestrians. We've got some kids playing outside here in 1921, And this is just 1 year before the King Edward Memorial Park would be constructed in 1922. And on the subject of kids and tunnels and tunnel shafts, you've got 2 kids here down in the tunnel in November in 1937 at the then still active pedestrianised tunnel shaft. It was the war that did for those, unfortunately. It blew the roofs off and pedestrian access was withdrawn from there afterwards. Here we see 1947 and the submerged one, but a great shot. It shows you some of the buildings on the other side of the river as well. And as I said, I wonder if it still looks the same. Here you see inside the, I think it's the, yeah, it's the Rotherhithe side in 1976. So the one that we focused on, the bit that I filmed, this is inside of it in 1976. As you can see, back then it didn't have its modern roof on. The glass one had been blown off. 1976 again. How these people got in here, whether they were connected to the maintenance crew or just things were more easier going back in those days, I don't know. But to the best of my knowledge, in 1976 they were no longer pedestrianised. And this shows the fans, and when we was down in the shaft and looked up and you could see or possibly hear those fans, these are them in 1976. And there is, or was, talk a few years ago of re-pedestrianising these again, but I do not know how that would work. I mean, that's going to be very fumey inside here, unless they run some kind of pipe work up to take the fumes right up. But yeah, I think probably a pipe dream, that one, as much as I would love to see it. 76 again. And here we are, right at the bottom in 1976 by those fans. Hope you all found that interesting. Now you'll join me back in the tunnel, back below the shaft, and we'll carry on with our tour. Well, that's one of the tunnel shafts, just one of them, and I bloody wish I could get into one of those to have a look. It looks fascinating. Probably absolutely riddled with pollution and goodness knows what, but fascinating nonetheless. And this here, where the tiles end and the concrete begins, this is the part that was heavily restored, that had the millions of pounds spent on it. Obviously it was needed. This is classed as one of Europe's most dangerous tunnels, by the way, because of its nowadays lack of escape points. Those shafts, which were once pedestrianised, are now firmly locked up. So in the event of an emergency, if you were slap bang in the middle of the tunnel, you would have quite a distance to go to either end. The pollution levels are also a factor what makes it quite bad, which is why I chose to do this one early. First time I came down here, I only went a quarter of a way to that shaft with the stairs, and the ventilation That was 2 years ago, 2+ years ago. Was very, very bad. They must have improved it. I know they've been working on it. And as I said, when we were discussing the tunnel shafts a few years back, there was discussion about re-pedestrianising them. I can't see that happening myself, but I would love to see it happen. It would cost multi-millions of pounds to make that happen, and would be a health and safety nightmare. $767 yards to the exit. I wonder, in the event of a real emergency, if they would or could open those shafts up, because if the stairs are still in them, I don't know. I don't know if any of you saw it on the news, but recently there was a fire in the Blackwall Tunnel, and they had to evacuate that one. My nan had an absolute horror of tunnels in case they burst, the ones that went underwater. Cyclist. About 20 pedestrians a day use the tunnel. Would have been many more in its original day. The loud whirring noise you can hear now is the one that sucks the pollution out. Some bring cool air in, or fresh air in. Now, you remember the one I showed you? I said to you about the first ventilation shaft that had the really ugly thing on top of it. That's that one. And you can hear its fans going away. Still got their original ironwork though, which I like. face. Sorry, another cyclist. And you can only go 20 miles an hour in here. It has a pretty rigorous height restriction on it. Although in its original day it did have horse-drawn omnibuses go through it, which were much smaller than our buses, of course. I'll tell you where my nan's horror of tunnels came from. Her dad was a rag and bone man, and they come from Custom House. And in my nan's words, no one in Custom House had sod all to give away. So they would go over the river or go to Dagenham. And nan's fear of tunnels come from the late 1920s when she was a very, very young girl. She went out of her dad on one of his rounds over the river, so they went through the then very dimly lit Blackwall Tunnel on a horse and cart. And when they was about halfway through, and her dad goes to her, "Oh, you know, there's millions of gallons of water above us, girl." And my nan got scared. And he went, "No, don't be scared." He went, "If it burst, we'd be killed outright. Suck all the air out your lungs, it would." She should imagine cheered her up no end. We'll be coming to the end of the tunnel in a minute because I can feel the fresh air. Yes. And it's light out. I was also advised by an online friend who does this kind of thing that doing it early would be a good idea because everyone's too drowsy and miserable in the morning. If you do it in the afternoon, you get honked at and things shouted at you. wasn't too dreadful, was it? Bit warm in the middle of the tunnel. Exactly the same as on the opposite side, but interestingly on this side, you see this metal structure there. This is a bridge, and when you're in Rotherhithe station, which will take you to the world's oldest tunnel under a navigable river, look up when you're in the station, you'll see a blue painted iron girdered structure. That's that which bridges itself over the railway line. The railway line goes through here. See the gap? Now you can go up this way, which will take you out to Rotherhithe station, but that's for our journey back home after London's longest street. So we walk to the end up here. I'll show you the other cutting face thing, because it's got some information on it about that one. They were clever, the Edwardians, with their plaques. On this side of the road, where we came in, they put the one telling you about when the tunnel was constructed and who opened it and whatnot. And at this end, they put the plaque telling you about the cutting face. So it was really well thought out. Nice, cool, clean, fresh air. All I can say to you is, if you do come through this one, I don't advise it in the late afternoon or early evening. So it's all tunnels and history with this series, because when we get to the end of here, we'll start another series where I take us right to straight down the Jamaica Road, because to start London's longest street, we need to get to by Tower Bridge, and rather going the Jamaica Roadway, this time we'll be going all along the riverfront, the Paul McCartney pub, walking past the Angel and hitting London's longest street itself, which begins by St Mary's Church, Rotherhithe now, but was originally much, much longer than it is. And you may, any of you that have watched it, remember the location of the Norwegian church. Oh. God's death, my lords, I was nearly killed outright, as Queen Elizabeth I would have said. I often wonder when I film and of course encounter things like this, these tunnels, what someone from Queen Elizabeth I's day, or particularly what Samuel Pepys would have made of it. I think he would have been absolutely fascinated by the idea of walking under the Thames. People in his day were sent down in great wooden diving bell things that were like a barrel. Here we are. It's the cutting face and the Norwegian church on this side. The London County Council, Rotherhithe Tunnel. The cast steel segments of which this arch is built formed the cutting edge of the shield, by means of which the tunnel south and under the river was constructed. So, when we saw the men at the front of that monstrous looking apparatus, this was part of it. This formed the cutting face, and I think it's brilliant that they incorporated it in part of their design. And you've got the Norwegian church over there, Southwark Park just over there, St Mary Church Street and St Mary Rotherhithe just over there and round that way. And to get us to our next location and our next piece, we're going to have to go all the way down this road to Tower Bridge. So I'm going to finish this one. I hope you enjoyed and you'll join me for the next video if you're so inclined, where we shall go by the interactive map again all the way down, and I'll start us off with our next series. Thanks for watching everyone, and I shall see you all soon.